Well, welcome everyone. My name is Peter Stein, and I'm senior programmer for Frameline here in San Francisco. Welcome to all of you. We've called this talk Humanizing the Other, Films versus Hate. It's one of a dozen talks and panels during Frameline 45, and I want to give a very special thanks to Google for their sponsorship, not only of this panel, but for their support of the whole festival, including for the film Nico, whose creative team you are about to meet in this conversation. Now, the reason I wanted to do this discussion about films against hate is while I and the team were programming this year's selection of films, we in the US were experiencing a wave of anti Asian violence across the country on the heels of 4 years of rising xenophobia in this country and around the world. And that was followed recently by a disturbing number of anti Semitic incidents. All of this against the backdrop of what we in the queer community know is a world that is often hostile and violent towards us, most notably toward trans women of color, but sadly, in many countries, against anyone who dares to live an open queer life. So naturally, I found myself wondering as I'm doing this work programming a film festival, wondering in some despair in the midst of all this, do films really matter? What is a 90-minute movie going to do to change a culture of intolerance? And yet, the brave and inspiring filmmakers whose work we show continue to prove that films can make a difference in countering hate. And so today, we get to meet a group of artists and advocates who are telling stories that, in my view, truly help to put human faces on those whose societies often want to marginalize us. So I'm pleased to welcome the filmmakers here to our panel. We have a wonderful group. Here they are. By way of introduction, we have three folks from the film team of Nico joining us from Germany. Now, Nico, for those of you who didn't get a chance to see it, is a fictional story that examines the personal toll of a xenophobic attack and the resilience required to overcome it. So please welcome, first we have writer and director Aline Gehring. Hi, Aline. We have writer and producer and the on-camera star, principal cast member of Nico, Sara Fazilat. Hi, Sara. And writer and cinematographer, Francy Fabritz. Hi, Francy. And as you hear, all three of them co-wrote and co-developed the film. Also joining us from Germany is Yana Ugrekhelidze, whose film Instructions for Survival introduces us to one transgender man and his family struggling to live clandestinely in the Republic of Georgia. Welcome, Yana. And congratulations to you because your film just was given the prestigious Teddy Jury Award just a few days ago at the Berlin International.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Really
Super.
wonderful. Hi, Yana. And finally, no stranger to Frameline audiences, here's David France joining us from New York. David is the director of Welcome to Chechnya, which screened at last year's Frameline and which won last year's Teddy Award for Best Documentary, and which was a powerful expose of the plight of gays and lesbians persecuted in Chechnya. Hi, David. Welcome back to Frameline.
Thanks for having me back, Peter.
Of course. So you've been hearing me talk a lot now, but I really want this to be a conversation about the power of films to change people's minds and hearts. Now, each of you has made films that focus on your own society's outsiders, whether queer, trans, immigrants, undocumented, LGBT, people of color. So I want to ask really why? Why focus on that story for you? And maybe I'll start with Aline, if you wouldn't mind. Why did you turn your thoughts and ideas to the lives of outsiders?
Sorry, do you hear me back? Because I just saw that someone put my mic down.
No, we can hear you fine.
Super. Sorry, I was just for a second irritated. Can you repeat the last part of your question?
Yes. The question is really, why do you turn your imagination to the stories of outsiders? What are you trying to do there?
It's more the story of myself. I wouldn't call it outsider. And no, I think it's a good question. I didn't think about it like this. I think it's still a very important voice that should be seen more in cinema, especially women. But I never thought about that it could be an outsider, film of outsiders. But maybe Sara or Francy have another idea for this question.
Sure. No, I mean, and that's instructive to hear that even though you're telling the story in the film of Nico of a German Persian woman, that this is feeling who is an immigrant and who is attacked in a way for being different, that it still feels like it's a personal story for you. Sara, do you feel the same way?
Well, I would say it's the mic is on, isn't it? Yes.
Yes, you're all good.
I think it's all around the world like this, and in Germany especially, it is more the narrative of the white cis hetero man, and the other people, and this is where we come to the other thing also, can't really identify themselves with the female leading characters in films. So actually for me it was really important to show diverse female role models in different ways, and this is also why we, for example, also chose to have one of the women who is beating up Nico and not a man, to show the different range of different kind of women, what women are allowed to do and not, because normally they're just restricted to a certain part. And also in form of diversity, if you're talking in form of sexual orientation, or if you're talking about being a migrant, or it's not so common in Germany, or most of the time, if it's like this, she's a cleaner in a film or something, but she's not the main actress who is empowering herself or something. And this was important voice, I think, and this is also what the feedback we got to tell. So I'm sure Francy also wants to add something.
Francy, you're up. Let me do one little technical moment. Since we're in like 3 different continents. If you're not on camera speaking, it might be helpful to mute your audio because there's a lot of kind of echo and crosstalk. But Francy, the mic is passed to you now.
I agree with what Eline and Sara already said, and I think for us it was most important. Like, what do we want to see on the screen? What do we want to see in the cinema? And therefore, we realized that these people that we want to see, like women in different with different skin color, like from everywhere, with different sexualities, you know, body shapes, whatever. It's just there's only, like, I don't know, very small percentage of these films seen in German cinema, and that's why I think we did it. And plus, it's our life reality. It's who we are, and even though it's a bubble that we are living in, especially here in Berlin, probably the same also in San Francisco. Still, it needs to be on screen.
Yes, good point. Now, Yana, you chose to document a story in your home country of the Republic of Georgia. And for those who haven't seen it, you befriended and really gained the confidence of a young transgender man who really had to live, has had to live in secret. What drew you to that story, and were you on a kind of a mission to tell a bigger story than just a personal one?
First of all, I never take part in the projects that are not touching me or somehow are not part of me. So when it came to the question to do or not to do this film, the decision was made more instinctively. So from one side, I'm my whole life surrounded by LGBTQ friends. Though Georgia, my homeland, is quite patriarchal country with a lot of traditions and prescripts how to live and how to think. But there is and there was all the time since no one of us even knew that there was such an abbreviation like LGBTQ, there was a community. So we grew up together, we were developing together, sharing the problems, laughing and crying together. So the problems of my friends, they were always my problems as well. So that was the reason why I decided to do this film. And because of the fact also that one people don't accept another people, exclude other people, one people deny other people, first in the family, then this denial becomes in a mass denial, and first denied by their own parents, then denied by the society, then denied by the state. So it's like in a chain reaction. So from one side, there was an impact to do this film, an urgent need, a desperate need to talk about all these issues that were shown in the film, this side, and to bring this topic of non-acceptance and denial of a human being. And in addition to this, to show the result of this denial and not acceptance, what some people have to do to survive, what price one have to pay, what happens when one is all alone, denied on all the levels, by the parents, by the state, by the society, and how it can come to such a disaster that destroys the whole life. I know the protagonists in the film quite a long time outside the LGBTQ community, so they are not just some people I found in the street. And
yeah,
so it's like all points were met together, and that's not just a good story to tell, but my personal mission. I won't be too loud and say that's my social mission. No, that was my personal mission, because I was touched from all the sides, directly and indirectly, to talk about this.
Thank you. It's a beautiful segue, David, to your films. Really, in some ways, you've made films that were very much directed out of your own personal experience with your community, and some you've done as a journalist, going into societies that you didn't know, but where you were giving voice to voices who had no way to express the peril that they were in. What with regard to Welcome to Chechnya, in some ways quite similar to Yana's film, what drew you to telling that particular story, even though it was outside of your own personal experience in Chechnya?
Well, thank you for saying that about my other films. I have dedicated my filmmaking to telling the stories of queer people and activism, and the kinds of undertakings that so many people in our community have dedicated themselves to in ways that have changed the world. And I've been trying to lift our stories up as kind of canonical stories, stories not just of relevance to queer folks, but to humanity itself. And yes, my two previous films were both historical. The first one about AIDS activism, and the second one about the really early LGBTQ movement around Stonewall and the foundation for the contemporary transgender movement. When I read about what was happening in Russia, I knew that it was a form of activism that was essential and urgent and very queer, and of the kind ongoing that was having that potential power to be changing history. And so I called up the people who had built this kind of underground railroad in Chechnya and Russia to rescue people who were being targeted for this genocide, and were turning their entire lives over in this really heroic way to do what they could do to save lives. And that's a kind of activism that I think, like the two previous stories I told, really have this power not just to inspire, but to bring people into a world that requires them to do something to address the world and to address history and to address the challenge that faces the people in Russia.
Well, there's no question that really powerful stories can, in the moment when we're seeing them, open up your heart, open up a path of empathy or compassion in the audience. But there's always that question of what we do with that compassion as filmmakers, as storytellers. How do we move that into kind of changing the society? And I'm wondering whether any of you feels that your films can do that, or what the mechanisms are to use your films as instruments of change. If that is even on your radar when you're looking for a story, or is that really for other people to do? And either David or Yana, if you want to start there, and then we'll work backwards.
So the question was about role of the films.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's the question is really, yeah, how do you want to use your film to actually change the way the situation is, and how would you go about to do that?
Just to make the films and just to talk about this. So there is a big role of the films, all these festivals and screenings and films and communities. They are all great. That's something one needs to have and to do and to fight for. And one needs to talk about this. And yes, sometimes one has a feeling that the addressee, the recipient that actually has to change is so far away. I guess no homophobe sits now with us, and no gay, lesbian, or trans hater will visit your festival or generally watch films about others, about queers, merely just because he doesn't have any interest. No one from the crowd that was shown in the beginning of my film will sit and watch this live streaming just because no one of them identifies themselves with queers on any of levels. So these people, they don't have queer children, no queer sister, no queer brothers, no neighbors. And if they will just destroy them or just deny them, and they just want to have them because it's too much work and points. So the simplest certainty to accept that's a free human being and accept him, her, them, just because it's a human being, that's too much work. So it's good. I guess the film can change this, absolutely. And yeah, as I said, though it can seem that the potential recipient is far away, still we all have to talk about this, just to be there as a support for those who are seeking for answers, who are trying to understand themselves, who are not sure who they are, including the parents, the members of the families who suddenly have such a, they call this a problem, how to deal with this and how to act. That's a big job. One has to read, one has to seek for information, one has to watch films, one has to educate oneself when it doesn't happen by a natural way, when you just accept someone how one is. So when one doesn't have this natural ability, unconditionally share his attention, time, or love, and not to feel himself betrayed if the object of his love appears to be different. Oh God, my child is a trans or a gay. Oh God, my friend is a lesbian. And so what a disaster. So when one cannot deal with those vanished hopes, we must be there to change this somehow. And definitely there's a big role of films that can shape people's opinion, even if it's unshapely.
David, do you want to chime in here on kind of the role of the films in?
Well, I absolutely agree with Yana on this. The films, you know, I came to filmmaking after a long career in print, in newspapers and magazines and books, and what I discovered in making my first film was the incredible outsized power of documentary films to reach people, to change culture, to inspire people, as I said before. And because my trilogy of films is about activism, I've made sure to work with activists to make sure that my film is a tool for them in their work, that I'm asking them to let me tell their stories, and in exchange, I'm giving them a film that hopefully will give them keys to open up more doors, will inspire people to join them in the struggle, and to actually have an impact. And with Welcome to Chechnya, they've the people in the film from the Russian LGBT Network and the Moscow Community Center for LGBTQ initiatives, they've used the film to have screenings with the parliamentary leaders, with diplomatic leaders from around the globe, to begin a campaign 3+ years into this genocide, to get world leaders to add their voices to condemnation of what's happening there. And the film, in their hands, has engendered sanctions from the US, which had been silent about what's happening there, sanctions from Europe, from the UK, from Canada and elsewhere. And it has put, in some way, their battles on the map in ways that are making it somewhat easier for them to continue their fight. Unfortunately, we haven't stopped the genocide in Chechnya, in the south of Russia, but we have made it undeniable. And that, I think, is the power of film.
That's tremendous. That we think of documentaries having that power, but I want to come back to the Nico team here, because you've chosen to tell a fictional story, and also, even though it deals with a serious incident, a personal attack on the character that Sara plays, your film kind of has a light touch. There's a gentle sense of both humor and personal, the personal challenge to overcome that. So I'm wondering, is it too much to ask of a fictional story to change the hearts and minds of people or politicians? Do you even go into writing a story with that in mind? Or are you just trying to tell a good story? In other words, what comes first, the social mission or the storytelling? And any of you can take that question. Or none of you. I just want to get the Nico team to yeah, Francy, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it depends on each of us, really, like what is, why are we, it comes to the question, like, why are we making films? And I can only speak for myself. And for me, the social mission is my biggest motivation, let's say it that way. And humor is a big part of it, because I think we can open up people's minds or so with humor. And that you say it's a light film. It was also like for us, it was important that Nico is not only seen as a victim, but also at the end, it's a woman, it's a self-empowered human being, you know, and maybe this is already giving someone out there a motivation to fight for her, they, or himself in the life reality where this person lives, you know. And also, I think it's also important whose story we are telling. For example, when do you see like a Persian main character in cinema? I've never seen a Persian woman in the main cast so far. It's mostly like smaller roles. And on the other hand, also like not only what are we telling, but also who's behind the camera is also really important for us. Who's actually doing the making the movie, you know. So therefore, we are also trying to have a very diverse team and and things like that. So I'm a little bit nervous.
Clearly, with Nico being at least in this group here that's with us, and an all women team of writers, directors. Francy, you shot the film. and it's a powerful statement in and of itself that sometimes goes overlooked. So Sara, please chime in on this notion of representation.
Just with the team building, it was also really important for us. We were also thinking about who we are asking and who we are not asking. I mean, it was not like that we said, no, we are not asking any man or something, no. But we wanted to have a focus and also to give the chance to different kind of people so often don't get the voice or don't get the chance to do these things. And regarding the question of the mission, I just said, which popped up in my mind. I can remember when I was a teenager, I watched Philadelphia. And then this film, even I didn't know anything about HIV and AIDS. But this 2 hours, so I don't know how long the film is, made me that I went to this Rat- und Tatzentrum in Bremen. Bremen is the city where I grew up. And the Rat- und Tatzentrum is a place you can go and inform yourself, or even if you have HIV, they will help you and so on. So I started to make research and figure out everything about it. And I held lectures at school. And I collected also money for the World AIDS Day and stuff like that. And then I was like, wow, this film encouraged me so much that I took this story, which doesn't have anything to do with me because I'm not a gay man with HIV, but that had such an impact and such an effect that I wish I can do that too. And it's not that I'm doing films and I'm like, I have a mission and I have to convince everyone to take on my mission. But I think it's such a strong and powerful media, and you've got such a wide range to reach the people, and that's what I'm hoping for, because somehow maybe it's also naive to say we can change the world with films, but I think we all have always this discrepancy between yes we can, no we can't. And even if there's like this one child who makes an impact in their life, this is also already something really big for me, and I hope that this is what we can do with our films.
Okay. Yana, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Sorry. I just wanted to say that David said he used to work in other spheres, and Aline, Francy, and Sara, they were working on feature film. I would add that the whole art in whole has to be used in all possible appearances. Films, animations, literature, theater, music, all these possible ways have to be used to encipher some information. All these ways have to build a dialogue with the others on all layers of perception. So when it won't work with help of music or dance performance, I guess that's more complicated way to talk, because one appeals to very subtle layers of perception. Maybe with more direct way, a fictional film, the dialogue can happen. Well, not with fictional film, then with documentary, and then finally it will knock someday in the head. But for sure, our art, let's say in whole, has always saved the world, and I guess it will be like this.
Yeah, when I was working in museums, which I did in between a documentary career and a festival career, one of the kind of watchwords that we were warned about as a bad thing was art in the service of ideas. That is, art needed to exist for its own sake. And while that is, of course, a noble and ultimately probably in its own way transcendent idea of the way art can work, we in the media field often feel that art is best shown in the service of ideas. We just showed a film last weekend by a woman, Deborah Chasnoff, who passed away, whose whole body of work, she didn't even want to be called art. She was a documentarian who felt her work needed to change lives, educate people, and make change in society. So it's this interesting tension between the aesthetic goals, right, and the more sort of socially engaged ones. I'm wondering, David, do you ever struggle with that with that tension between making something that is in the moment a sort of artistically transcendent work and something that just is going to powerfully make the activist change that you're looking for?
I think that they in combination are excellent. When I started in documentary film, which had been the extension of my career in journalism, I discovered that you have to use the language of cinema in order to be able to carry that message forward, that it really needs to work within the form of art and the craft. And I try to do that. I try to make sure that the audience doesn't think I've spent too much time on the artistic aspect at the risk of slowing down the urgency of a story like Welcome to Chechnya. And it did take me almost a year in post-production on Welcome to Chechnya to get my kind of the disguises of the various subjects of the film, get them corrected and get them done in an artistic way. And so that did slow the film down some. And so there is that problem, right, where you want an urgent story to get out to the world urgently, but you also want it to carry the language that people are accustomed to seeing in film and accustomed to receiving their information through that language. As Sara was pointing out, that a good piece of cinema has those messages buried deeply inside it, and I think that's the way people find the motivation to go and act themselves.
Say, Eileen, I didn't have a chance to ask you, sort of, for maybe it's about thinking about because you're a young filmmaker. This is actually I believe your feature film debut. In fact, you just picked up an award last night, sort of the Germany's sort of student Oscar in a way. What's your hope for either this film or your next films in terms of opening up people's eyes and sort of understanding the story of people like Nico, your protagonist in the film? You also have an undocumented worker who is one of your sub characters. Where do you see the journey of this film going?
Still, I'm very overwhelmed that Sara wrote a thank you speech yesterday on a big stage. So I told her on the phone today, I'm still shocked in a way. So it's not that I have a vision and now we start the road and it goes this and this and this way. I'm really still shocked in a very good way. And I just hope, because I'm as a viewer of films, for me in personal, it's the most important thing to be able to identify with what I see. And I've felt it when I started film school. I missed, it's 10 years ago almost, and I missed in television in Germany, for example, I missed the identification parts in films. And I have a feeling in the last 10 years, it's changing, concerning people of color, concerning more women behind in front of the camera, concerning LGBT, etc. topics that become, for example, when there was there were these films about, let's say, lesbians, and the film was about that they are in love with each other. And what I would wish for the society and our films is that it's just a side effect, and the film is like that it's not the main topic, because it's arrived in our society. And this is what we tried with Nico. We decided in the very beginning to not tell the audience where she's from and to making an immigrant film. No, she is a German citizen who gets from other people to feel like she's a foreigner. And I didn't answer your question, and I can answer many ways, but yes, I would love for every film in the future that there are more possibly identification roles for everyone of the society, and not only just one type of woman that gets the main roles.
Yeah, you answered it just fine, Aline, and it kind of combines with what Sara and David said about the power of any film, a fiction film, to allow you to identify and not think of the person as the other. I do want to get kind of a more factual update in a way from Yana about your main character, Alex. When we meet him in the film, he and his wife are really struggling to make it. And they are able to move to Belgium. Can you say, without betraying anything, how is he doing? How are they doing? Is he finding any more peace or contentment now that he's in a place where at least he's not under daily attack?
Yes. So Sasha and Mary, they are now in Belgium, and so now they are just trying to live in Belgium and licking the wounds and trying to learn how is it to live outside Georgia, outside this whole fear, and outside Georgian society. They had to lead a secret life all the time. So that's a big job, actually. And that's a quite long journey.
Yes, and David, it sort of it leads to a question for you. You're now a couple of years out from having made your film. The film may have social impact, and it's amazing that it's being seen even by legislators. But there's also the individual personal lives of the people whom you document, who are not just instruments of a message, but who have their own lives that they have to piece together. How do you keep in touch with your subjects? How involved are they, if they can be, in this effort? Have you had to lose track of some of them?
I have luckily remained in contact mostly directly with the people who are in the film, and I can report to you that they're all relatively well, which is great news. The activists who allowed me to tell their stories openly, and did so using their own identities and their own names, have, for the most part, had to step back from that work, and they felt the need to attach their identities to the stories in a way to protect them, because the work that they were doing brought them into great peril, and hopefully the film did play some role in keeping them safe. The people who survived the genocide and were making their way through this underground network have all landed in places where they are much more safe, and many of them are not in their final destination countries yet. They have further journeys ahead of them. The film only follows them to the Russian border and doesn't follow them beyond then. But we have been working closely with them to make sure that we can do anything we can do to connect the supporters of the film with them to help their journeys advance in safety, and as they continue to seek for an ordinary life.
Well, it's that in and of itself, your dedication as well as the power of the film shows in a way that some of my early despair this past spring, seeing this rise of anti-immigrant hate and anti-Asian hate in San Francisco, even can in small ways be counteracted by thoughtful and beautiful films, as all of you have made. I think we've reached maybe the end of our time here, so I really encourage all of you watching to, if you haven't already seen Nico and Instructions for Survival and David's film Welcome to Chechnya, to seek them out either on the Frameline platform during this festival or on streaming platforms elsewhere, and soon in real theaters in live conversations. Thank you to all of you. It's been wonderful to have this conversation.
Thank you
for having us.
Thanks to my fellow panelists. Wonderful.
Great to see you all.
Have the best festival. I hope to see you soon in person.
Absolutely.